Manqala is a family of board games played around the world, sometimes called sowing games, or count and capture games, which describes the gameplay. The word Manqala, copyright comes from the Arabic word naqala, copyright meaning literally to move. No one game exists with the name Manqala. The name is a classification or type of game. This word is used in Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt, but is not consistently applied to any one game. More than 800 names of traditional Mancala games are known, and almost 200 invented games have been described. However, some names denote the same game, while some names are used for more than one game. Some of the most popular Mancala games are Bowla Kiswahili, widespread along the east coast of Africa, and an integral part of Swahili culture. One of the most difficult games to learn because of its rather complex rules. Chishalo, widespread in Central Africa, from Uganda to Zambia. Kongkok, close variants in South Asia from the Maldives to the Philippines, known by many different names. Kalo, a modern game played mostly in the USA and Europe, Aware, close variants are played in the Caribbean, throughout Western Africa, and in immigrant communities in North America and Europe. Togus Kajula, played in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, where it is considered superior to chess. A Mongolian modification of this game is called Ezangsorgal. General gameplay: most Mancala games share a common general gameplay. Players begin by placing a certain number of seeds, prescribed for the particular game, in each of the pits on the game board. A player may count their stones to plot the game. A turn consists of removing all seeds from a pit, sowing the seeds and capturing based on the state of board. This leads to the English phrase count and capture, sometimes used to describe the gameplay. Although the details differ greatly, this general sequence applies to all games. Equipment. Equipment is typically a board, constructed of various materials, with a series of holes arranged in rows, usually 2 or 4. The materials include clay and other shapeable materials. Some games are more often played with holes dug in the earth, or carved in stone. The holes may be referred to as depressions, pits, or houses. Sometimes, large holes on the ends of the board, called stores, are used for holding the pieces. Playing pieces are seeds, beans, stones, cowrie shells, or other small undifferentiated counters that are placed in and transferred about the holes during play. Board configurations vary among different games but also within variations of a given game. For example, Ndodoe is played on boards from 2A6 to 2A10. The largest is Kuba with a board of 160 holes requiring 320 seeds. And Ncha copyright, played on longer rows with up to 50 pits and using 400 seeds. The most minimalistic variants are Nanowari and Microwari, created by the Bulgarian ethnologue Asha Popova. The Nanowari board has 8 seeds in just 2 pits. Microwari has a total of 4 seeds in 4 pits. With a 2-rank board, players usually are considered to control their respective sides of the board, although moves often are made into the opponent's side. With a 4-rank board, players control an inner row and an outer row, and a player's seeds will remain in these closest 2 rows unless the opponent captured them. Objective: the objective of most 2- and 3-row Mancala games is to capture more stones than the opponent. In 4-row games, one usually seeks to leave the opponent with no legal move or sometimes to capture all counters in their front row. At the beginning of a player's turn, they select a hole with seeds that will be sown around the board. This selection is often limited to holes on the current player's side of the board, as well as holes with a certain minimum number of seeds. In a process known as sowing, all the seeds from a hole are dropped one by one into subsequent holes in a motion wrapping around the board. Sowing is an apt name for this activity, since not only are many games traditionally played with seeds, but placing seeds one at a time in different holes reflects the physical act of sowing. If the sowing action stops after dropping the last seed, the game is considered a single lap game. Multiple laps or relay sowing is a frequent feature of Mancala games, although not universal. When relay sowing, if the last seed during sowing lands in an occupied hole, all the contents of that hole, including the last sown seed, are immediately re-sown from the hole. The process usually will continue until sowing ends in an empty hole. Another common way to receive multiple laps is when the final seed sown lands in your designated hole. Many games from the Indian subcontinent use Pusakanawa laps. These are like standard multi-laps, but instead of continuing the movement with the contents of the last hole filled, the player continues with the next hole. A Pusakanawa lap move will then end when a lap ends just prior to an empty hole. If a player ends his stone with a point move, he gets a free turn. Capturing: depending on the last hole sown in a lap, a player may capture stones from the board. The exact requirements for capture, as well as what is done with captured stones, vary considerably among games. Typically, a capture requires sowing to end in a hole with a certain number of stones, ending across the board from stones in specific configurations, or landing in an empty hole adjacent to an opponent's hole that contains one or more pieces. Another common way of capturing is to capture the stones that reach a certain number of seeds at any moment. Also, several games include the notion of capturing holes, and thus all seeds sown on a captured hole belong at the end of the game to the player who captured it. History: among the earliest evidence of the game are fragments of a pottery board and several rock cuts found in Aksumite areas in Matara and Yea, which are dated by archaeologists to between the 6th and 7th century AD. The game may have been mentioned by Georgius of Segla in his 14th century Ge'ez text Mysteries of Heaven and Earth, where he refers to a game called Kaki, a term used in Ge'ez to refer to both Chbeta and Sontaras. The similarity of some aspects of the game to agricultural activity and the absence of a need for specialized equipment present the intriguing possibility that it could date to the beginnings of civilization itself. However, there is little verifiable evidence that the game is older than about 1300 years. Some purported evidence comes from the Kurna Temple graffiti in Egypt, as reported by Parker in 1909 and Murray in his A History of Board Games Other Than Chess. However, accurate dating of this graffiti seems to be unavailable, and what designs have been found by modern scholars generally resemble games common to the Roman world, rather than anything like Mancala. Although the games existed in pockets in Europe, it is recorded as being played as early as the 17th century by merchants in England. It has never gained much popularity in most regions, except in the Baltic area, where once it was a very popular game, and Bosnia, where it is called Banban and still played today. Mancala has also been found in Serbia, Greece and in a remote castle in southern Germany. The USA has a larger Mancala playing population. A traditional Mancala game called Warra was still played in Louisiana in the early 20th century, and a commercial version called Kala became popular in the 1940s. In Cape Verde, Mancala is known as Aril. It is played in the islands and was brought to the United States by Cape Verdean immigrants. It is played to this day in Cape Verdean communities in New England. Psychology: like other board games, Mancala games have led to psychological studies. Retsitsky has studied the cognitive processes used by Walla copyright players. Some of Retsitsky's results on memory and problem-solving have recently been simulated by Fernand Gobet with the Trest computer model. De Voogd has studied the psychology of bow playing. See also: List of Mancala games, references. Further reading: Erickson, Jeff. Sowing games. Games of No Chance. Cambridge University Press. Russ, Larry. The Complete Mancala Games Book. New York, Marlowe, Townsend, Philip. African Mancala in Anthropological Perspective. Current Anthropology 20, 794 €796 doi, 10.1086/200 JSTORA 2741688 Deladic, A. and A. Pupuva. Warrior Solo. Le Jeu de Calcul African. Paris, Cedic. Murray, H. J. A History of Board Games Other Than Chess. Oxford at the Clarendon Press. Townsend, P. Bow, The Swahili Ethic in African Idiom. Paiduma 28, 75 €191. JSTORA 41,409,882 Voogd, A. Jada. Mancala Board Games. British Museum Press, London. External links, A Great Introduction from MSO. General information on count and capture games, Mancala, Aware and Bow history and descriptions, in pictures, Sudan's calculating game BBC, an online version of Mancala.